Good morning and welcome to Day 2 of Signals from the Future, Emerging Technologies in Science Journalism. The main aim of this workshop is to shed light on future and emerging technologies, or FETs in short, in science journalism. Today we're going to focus on artificial intelligence. FETs are fascinating to broad audiences, but can prove challenging in that despite having massive potential future impacts, their precise workings and pathways to innovation can be unclear. My name once again is Sarah Keane. I work for eutema and we're a partner in the FETFX project consortium. Recapping yesterday's presentation, FETFX is a coordination and support action funded by the European Union's Horizon 2020 FET program. FETFX is developing a cross-media communication platform which connects science, industry, and society in order to tell stories on FETs and to engage directly with the general public. The project's key mission is to foster the public understanding of how FET research, which could appear far from reality, and direct applications is actually needed to generate innovation and to benefit society in the long term. Our co-organizer and co-host for this workshop is the Quest project, which Alessandra will introduce.
Thank you, Sarah. My name is Alessandra Fornetti. I am the coordinator of the Quest project. Before them, I'm also executive director of the 10 program of the Venice International University, which is an association of 20 universities from all over the world based in a common campus in Venice, in the Venice Lagoon. As Sarah said, I'm coordinating the Quest project, which is co-hosting this workshop today. Quest is also an Horizon 2020 project funded under the Science with and for Society program. Quest defines and supports, Quest investigates what defines and supports quality in science communication. We do this through a multidisciplinary team of scholars and professionals working in the fields of journalism, social media, and museums, as those are the three communication strengths in which we focus our Quest research. We also use 3 case studies for our investigation, namely climate change, vaccines, and artificial intelligence, as they are among the most debated science topics in our society, at least currently. Professor Neil Maiden from City University London will show you later today one of the key outputs in this research concerned with AI in Quest. AI is also a key topic in another Horizon project that we recently kicked off at Venice International University, which is MUHAI, which focuses on human-centric AI, and that we run together with Professor Luke Steels, who is one of the panelists today, and whom I thank for being here with us today. I'm personally particularly interested in the panel that follows because as Venice International University in MUHAI, we lead the communication and dissemination WP. Therefore, the image and the portrayal of AI is central to our work now. So thank you again for having Quest with you and enjoy the panel.
Thank you, Alessandra. So I would like to remind the audience to please keep your microphones on mute and to disable your cameras to reduce any background distractions. If you have any questions you would like to submit for this panel, you can type them into the chat box. During the following software demonstration, we will encourage you to activate your cameras, and at that point you can talk directly with Quest's Neil Maiden. So we're going to start with the mis-portrayal of AI in the media, what to do about it. To answer this question, we have a panel of researchers and journalists who are going to weigh in. I will make a quick note that Dr. Scott Brennan is unfortunately unwell. He would have been joining us from the Reuters Institute, for the study of journalism in the Oxford Institute. So unfortunately, he will not be joining us today. I would now like to introduce and pass the floor to the moderator, the CEO of eutema, Erich Prem.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And welcome everybody on the panel. It's a great pleasure. As some of you know, my background is in artificial intelligence and in epistemology. So this topic that we are discussing today is really close to my heart. And I'm thrilled to speak with an extinguished group of professors and leading journalists. Let me briefly introduce the panel to you. So We have with us today Luc Stales. He is Professor Emeritus from the VUB in the AI Research Group, and he's also the ICREA Research Professor at the Institute of Evolutionary Biology. We have Fausto Giunchiglia, who is full professor of computer science at the University of Trento in Italy. We have Dunja Mladenić. I hope I'm pronouncing this reasonably well. She's a senior researcher, project leader, and the head of the AI lab at the famous Jožef Stefan Institute. And then we have Renata Dacinger, who is a journalist, editor, and presenter of Let's Bite into the Science, that's running on Slovenian public television. And that's precisely what we want to do. We want to take out a bite of science. And I would like to start our investigation into the relation of artificial intelligence and how it's treated by the media with Luc. Luc and I go back quite some time. Luc may not know this, but you are actually it's your fault I have ended up where I am today. It all started with a Lego building workshop in a little village in a lovely countryside somewhere in Trento. And from there, that really took me on a tour through to MIT and other places and artificial intelligence and simple grounding. And look, if we think back, I mean, especially to those days, I mean, it was, I somehow think not so much has changed technologically, but who would have guessed that 20 years later, we see this massive discussion of artificial intelligence basically everywhere in the media, to an extent that people feel threatened, but also enabled. I mean, it has become impossible to discuss anything in information technology without AI. When you think back, Luc, what do you think? How has the perception changed, and where are we today, Luc?
Well, thank you, Erich. This spring school was in 1993, I believe. So we can celebrate, 30 years of contact. I would say that, I go back a long time. I mean, I started in AI in the early 70s, was my first paper. And there has been a hype similar to the one today in the late 70s, the beginning of the 80s. But now we have an incredible wave of discussion in the media and talk and strategic planning by all countries. And I mean, it is just impossible to follow. But I think scientifically and technologically, there's also been enormous advances in the field. It's very hard to keep up. Of course, you have the deep learning movement and everything connected to that, but there are many other trends in AI. One of them is in semantic memory, in the knowledge graphs, which is just unbelievable, even though these ideas date from the 60s already. But I think I share the concern, a big concern actually, which is about the way that AI is portrayed in the media. And I'm not going to talk very long because we should have a panel, but I wanted to show 3 examples. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope this works out. These are, can everybody see my screen at the moment? Is that okay?
Yeah, it's coming up.
Yeah, it's fine.
We see a white screen and your mouse. So.
Let's see. I think I'll have to redo it then. Just
I think that might be the whiteboard function that is showing.
Okay. Well, let's do it this way then. Can you see it now?
Very well.
Okay. So I just showed 3 examples, you know. There is an organization in Switzerland called the Swiss Cognitive Global AI Hub. And every week I receive from them in my mailbox 12 stories that appeared in the media about AI. And they're always very positive. You know, it's a kind of good news show. And so I picked out just one recent example, the AI that spots Alzheimer's from cookie drawing. Okay, now they always give, and I think this is very nice, they always give the source of their articles, so we can go and look up the source. And in this case, it comes from the BBC, which is, I guess, a reputed organization for science communication. And okay, so you have this article. And then fortunately, and I think this is very important, this article gives the source of the news story, which is an article that appeared in a clinical journal. Now, the point of this example is that in the press, it appears as the AI spots Alzheimer. Now, if you read this article, the word artificial intelligence does not appear. In fact, it is a paper. It talks about linguistic markers for Alzheimer's disease. It's a statistical study. You know, it is, I would say, a normal scientific piece of work that is using some methods that came out of research into AI. But the point here is it says the AI spots Alzheimer. You know, that this is a problem that I would say in the paper you find statistical methods and other kinds of methods, but this is not the AI that spots Alzheimer. I mean, there's a kind of creation of, I would say, a fiction, which is the AI, as if it is, we have an autonomous, almost personality that is intelligent at the level of humans and is able to perform diagnosis, whereas in fact it is just a normal article, I would say scientific article in the scientific press. So this is already one difficulty that I see. And so this is the abstract, by the way, which doesn't mention AI, and the paper itself doesn't. So this is example 1. Example 2 is from a blog post on Facebook AI research. And you know, these blogs are blogs, right? They are researchers that talk about what they are doing. And in this case, it was an experiment on training AI bots to negotiate. I mean, this experiment, this is from 2017. I never heard anything about it afterwards. It certainly was not a publication in the scientific, you know, certified journals. And as part of this experiment, these AI bots started to construct some sort of a communication system. Now, this caught my attention because I'm interested in that topic. But then you have another, you know, step is that this Fast company, which is basically collecting stories and telling stories about AI. The title is AI, notice again, AI, you know, as a general thing, a unique thing, is inventing languages humans can't understand. Should we stop it? Now, the Facebook researchers, they stopped their experiment, presumably because you run out of ideas or something. But here it becomes researchers realized their bots were chattering in a new language, then they stopped it. Okay, well, this is a twist which is giving to this story. And then when it arrives at the Sun, well, the Sun is not, has the same reputation as the BBC, I guess, but it says Facebook shuts off its AI experiment after 2 robots begin to speaking in their own language that, well, they cannot, or only they can understand. Experts have called the incident exciting, but also incredibly scary. All right. And then if you open the newspaper and a bit further, you know, you see this picture and it says, the incident closely resembles the plot of the Terminator, in which a robot becomes self-aware and starts waging a war on humans. Now you see that a simple announcement on a blog turns into a story, a major advance in AI that will, you know, destroy humanity. And this is nerve-wracking, you know, because what can we do about this, right? And now the third example, and then I will, you know, I will basically stop. Well, I don't know, I'm not particularly a football fan, but I want to show you some football for the members of the audience that like football. And this is with a so-called AI camera. Well, this is how the news reports about it. Now, do you see something funny about this? Well, the thing is, I guess it's not so easy to follow the match with this supposed AI camera, right? And the trouble is that the AI camera is actually confused with the bald head of the referee. So it is tracking it is tracking the ball, but it is, you know, also distracted by this, right? And so you see here, AI camera runs soccer game for fans mistaking referee's bald head for ball. Now, again, the word AI is used here for a system which I guess no one would call intelligent, right? I mean, it is basically a vision system that is focused on this particular color. And so let me stop okay. So I stopped sharing, right? Can you see me now?
Yes, very good.
Okay. So what I want to say about is that we have a major problem, and I think it's partly due to some scientists overstating their case, but it's also due to corporate PR, you know, the AI evangelists, as they call themselves, who are hyping AI. And in the creation of this kind of myth of an intelligent system, the AI that will detect Alzheimer, that is, you know, tracking where the ball is going in a football match and all these kinds of things. So I don't know, I can talk a bit more about the dangers and what to do about it, but I would like to stop here and, you know, we can come back to these points later in the panel.
Thank you very much, Luke. Brilliant examples. I particularly like the last one, because at least it's positive in the sense, I think, but we'll come back to that, that it shows some of the difficulties of the technology. Whereas the other examples are more utopian and dystopian in a sense. And my feeling is, but we will discuss this, that journalists and the broad public have a great difficulty understanding the challenges involved in AI. And that may be generally true for some of those emerging technologies. So at least the third one, the bald head, somehow at least, you know, intuitively makes people understand what the challenges could be. So in that sense, it's a good example. Let me switch to Dunja, to the Jožef Stefan Institute. I mean, Dunja, you are running so many projects, and I know that you are also very active in talking about those projects and trying to address people that I'm sure you have similar experience, don't you?
Yes, yes. Thank you. So let me see. I love the examples. Thank you so much, because the examples I would like to share are not so concrete, I would say, but the message is similar. So if I can start with the main message, that I would like to convey here, that it's on us human that we should be ready for today and shape our tomorrow, not to put things in hands of some AI, however you call it. It can be cute or it can be dangerous, like the Terminator, but still, it's on us. And I was thinking why AI, because it's really opportunity and it's a possible social equalizer if in the right hands and minds. So again, pushing the responsibility on us as human. And I do believe, I mean, especially being a researcher in AI for several decades now, I do believe in the methods and I love doing this research. But I also believe, as every researcher, I guess, we are reflecting on, what am I really doing? And am I contributing to Big Brother watching you, or, all these things? But there are also ways how to do things and make it really responsible. Get the best out of AI. Take it as it is. It's a computer, it's an algorithm that is calculating for us, that can do some things faster. It has some intelligence in that sense, but it doesn't have many things which humans have. And we should keep that on our side, that we are deciding. So I was looking at general news, mainstream news, and looking what are the results if I look for, this is from over 70,000 different news feeds in 40 plus languages. And I found just on AI, in the last month, almost 3,000 events. And you can see they talk in different things. But for instance, the one with the robot who is going to judge, which is robot AI, right? Taking a role of which we know should stay with a human, and also other news. And then if we look at this news that I was showing, where they come from, you can see a nice spread around the world. So everyone is in a way thinking about AI or mentioning something about AI. Of course, today, in the last month, it's heavily colored also by COVID and possible uses of computers and maybe AI, which is meant also statistical data analysis in that. It's mainly in business in computers era, if you look at that. But the point at the end is we have AI which can and should work for and with human. It can offer technology, it can offer some kind of speed calculation, deep learning, whatever you want, modeling complex system, giving us more insight actually in the society that we live in and the processes that are there. But we would like to have our understanding of strengths and limitations. And why I'm saying this in this panel is because I believe that really journalists can help in raising awareness in general audience that AI is not should not be some personified, a thing there. And of course, we are working on regulatory system. And here I just want to point out the efforts of OECD on developing a classification framework for AI. Why is it important? Because it's designed to inform policymakers. So we can hope that this helps then in shaping regulatory system for all of us in the future. A kind of very simplified diagram, what I'm showing now. There is a data input, data output, there is some AI model, and there is some context in which is happening. And each of them is important because maybe if you do entertainment recommendation, it's not so critical if AI recommends you some new music or movie, or if you work on that in healthcare or some other more critical area. But it's important also, I believe, as I ask for researchers to present in a way that most of the general public can understand the reality behind AI. So we don't hear anymore, I mean, maybe we hear, but we don't believe anymore these stories which are kind of scary in a way, or at least trying to provoke fear, which for sure is also another thing we don't want to do with the society, because then the things become unrealistic. And here is just one more thing I would like to share with you. As I mentioned, the OECD, so there are efforts in different areas, but there are also trends and data analytics where there is constant observation of newsfeed to AI-related topics in different languages. So I can switch here to show only English. So we can see as of at the moment, what is happening on AI. So, I mean, you can see different streams. And I believe it is useful to observe different news feeds. We understand better, we get a wider understanding what are different media reporting on, and you can see the source. So you can also, as a human, decide how much to trust the source. And then OECD offers also on AI research publications, so people can also look a little bit more into that, what is available. And this graph in particular is showing how the number of research publications relates to GDP per capita in different countries. And maybe what I'm showing here, what we are seeing is not surprising, but still is good to see because it's directly out of the data from a big collection of research publications. And then there is also observation on job and skills, what is happening to understand, on the market, what skills are required, who is offering job in AI. And with that, I would like to conclude the presentation and just leave the rest for the discussion later. Thank you.
Many thanks, Dunja, and also thanks for reminding us of the OECD data and what the OECD is doing here. You mentioned one thing that I believe is a brilliant connection to Fausto, our discussion that we had by email. Fausto pointed out to me that there was an article, a New York Times survey actually 1 to 2 years ago, asking the broad public what their biggest fears are, what the most worrying future problems are. And artificial intelligence was #1. It outperformed, climate change or world hunger. Fausto, what do you say?
Well, I think, as usually, history repeats itself. As Luke said, we had a similar hype in the 70s, 80s. But then the bad news is that the AI winter came around, which is, if you're not careful enough, we're going to kill any AI and kill any possibility, or not kill, but kind of slow down or endanger the possibility of AI to create real benefit to the society. And just for all these reasons, for this big hype. And I want to make a point. I just believe personally that this is just makes no sense in the following sense, which is, as Luke said, AI now clearly is much, much more powerful in terms of technology science than it was like 30 years ago. And we see that. We see deep learning, we see all the knowledge graphs, all of this. But there is one fundamental limitation which applied at that time, which was the basic motivation why expert system failed. I mean, at least did not succeed as much as people thought. And this limitation of the 80s still applies now, which is, I remember when I was at Stanford working, the brittleness of AI, which is AI can be arbitrarily strong, but in a very, very narrow domain. And in that domain clearly will outperform the humans, but when you get out of that domain, there is no hope it's going to match our ability to adapt and evolve. And the bad news is that it's very hard, at least at the state of the art, to make an AI that, when applied to a domain, is able to succeed, that is able to understand when it does not know what it's talking about. This is a brittleness of AI, which is AI, the AI machines, the AI technology, build AI technology, they know they make mistakes. It's very hard. At the moment, it's an unsolved problem. Was a fundamental problem in AIs, which led to non-monotonic reasoning, whatever you want to call it, in the 80s, is still now the fundamental problem. It's a fundamental difficulty of AI to adapt to a never-changing world in space and time. So you see, in one sense, there's too much hype on the negative part, too much worries, because people see in AI something which is not there. They kind of do these generalizations, but they usually say, in AI, the boundary between what is feasible and what is impossible is very, very thin. And you really need to be an expert to understand where it is. And sometimes this hype ends up making promising, just they make no sense. So this to me, the point, and as I said, I usually say, I think this can clearly can endanger AI, which would be very bad because of the good things it can do. So that to me is the point, my fundamental point. If I have 2 more minutes, I want to maybe just give my own take on this, which is, if you take seriously what I said, which is the fundamental problem of AI, or at least one of the fundamental problems of AI is its brittleness, this inability to understand when it makes mistakes, and which is fundamentally the reason why AI algorithms just behave like machines, like cars, like planes. They need people to drive them because, I mean, they can be as smart as you want, but they don't adapt to the context. They don't adapt, they don't evolve. I think that a very interesting AI that we could think about, which is actually where I'm going as a research, so I'm going to make this point, which I think could help, would be if, together with pushing this kind of mainstream AI, very strong in domains, very, very powerful, with a lot of AI, a lot of research in concentrating how we can make AI become less brittle, to adapt. By the way, a lot of research is being done actually in these days. A lot of research is being pushed in that one dimension. But in that one dimension, the one take I want to make personally on this, which I just have one slide, which is this is what my own take on where I consider one dimension of AI, which I think could really not only improve the results that we've already taken, but also in a sense, improve in the way people think of AI, non-experts think of AI, is starting talking about AI, about how AI could help people, could help society. I mean, by the way, now sharing my screen, I don't know if you see it, no. All right. Now, the point I want to make here is the following. This is what the presentation I gave in Melbourne in 2017, which
Fausto,
is.
we see
your email. Or your.
Oh, right. What is this?
Your Zoom invitation.
Right. Okay. So where is? Now you see it? No. You don't see it.
Maybe if you unshare and then share again, there should be a window that pops up with choices of which image you want to share.
Okay, right. I know it. Okay, good. I see how to do this. Let me just do it. Where is my sharing and sharing thing? Right here. Okay.
It should be at the bottom in green.
I found it, yes. Right. Let me just see it. Now you see it?
Yes.
Good. So we all do, I think most of us who do AI, really do AI to improve, to do innovation, to improve the way society works, but somehow this kind of many times left implicit. And if the implicit, why we're trying to do the work. So my point here is, why don't we make this point explicit? And what does that mean? It means the following. If you think about AI, as I said, this was the presentation I gave in 2017, is, right, so far, a lot of people think of AI as, how can we build a machine whose intelligence exceeds human intelligence, right? So this deep neural network work. But what about thinking or making a key issue of how to build an artificial intelligence that helps people in helping other people. Think about working on this issue, and this is very much a social innovation point. Why don't we also consider or thinking of building AI machines which allow us as a person to interact with everybody else in the world? Think what could be if any of us could talk to the most qualified people in any for any problem you have to solve in the world. Right now, all the kind of technologies allow us to communicate with anybody in the world in space and time for 0 time, right? There are 7 billion people in the world, and easily with WhatsApp, WeChat, whatever, I can communicate with them very straightforward. I just send them a message. But in practice, how many do I talk to? 1,000? 500? Why? Because, I mean, this very well-known phenomenon in social sciences. Why? Because I don't have access to them, because I don't know how to talk to them, because I don't even know where they are, of course, and so on and so forth. So think of an AI which will help us not only being better in what we do, but also in connecting to the others. Now I'm stopping the slide here, the sharing. What is the point? The point is that maybe we should not only consider and concentrate in how to really build smarter machines, but also how to build machines which help people in connecting and collaborating with people. In this way, if we think about it, not only we could give a better message to the world, but also we would have explicit the goal of building technological innovation, which enables better social innovation, because ultimately this is what we want. We just want a better society. We don't want a faster society, a more efficient society. At least I don't care about that. I mean, I really want a better, more inclusive society where it is easier to live. So that would be my point on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fausto. And just to complement that, I think you're doing part of this research actually in the FET-funded WeNet project, if I'm not mistaken, right? This is precisely what you're trying to do there.
Yes, that diversity where we call the WeNet the Internet of Us. And our metaphor is that instead of connecting machines and then people to machines, we connect people, and the machines are the means for empowering people connections, rather than just the means in the sense that the protocol of interaction is in the hands of the people, not in the hands of the machines. And when you think about it, then the question becomes, what does that mean scientifically? And then if you think about it, the metaphor goes as follows. If you think of the internet in the 50s, when it was built, they had a lot of problems because they had to solve the heterogeneity of computers. I mean, think of the protocols, think of TCP/IP, think of later on the internet protocol at all layers. Then the problem is the same, one level up. We have to deal with the semantic heterogeneity of people, or as you call it, the diversity of people. We have to interoperate people. We have to interoperate their languages. We have to interoperate their culture. We have to interoperate their diversity. So basically, in WeNet, we are just coming up with protocols for people interactions. And we are running experiments of connecting students around the world in all the different continents. So we are running protocols where we see what it means to interoperate Europeans with South Americans, with the Italians, British, Dutch, Indians, Mongolians, Chinese, and so on and so forth, Mexicans. And this is, I think, is very interesting because it really puts the people at the center. So first you define the goal, first you have a social innovation goal, first you need to say, okay, how can I help you? So at the beginning of the project, we had the issues, okay, we want to interoperate people, to do what? And then we had the issue, okay, maybe you want to ask for help. Maybe you want to have dinner together. How do you do this? How do you play this across and within cultures? And I think this is a very nice storytelling from my point of view. And of course, you have to do huge amounts of AI. Of course, ultimately, you have to do a lot of machine learning, a lot of knowledge representation. But the goal is very clear in having the people, us, society, at the center.
Thank you, Fausto. Yeah, that's indeed telling a different story. That brings us to our last panelist, Renata, who is kind of on the other side of things. She is one of, I'm tempted to say one of the few science journalists, because yesterday in our discussion, we learned that the number of science journalists is actually decreasing, despite the fact that we believe there should be more of the likes of you. But Renata, for you, I mean, when you listen to this, can you understand these challenges and the, let's say, maybe the feeling of AI researchers that they are not properly represented in the media, Renata?
Yes, I can understand them, but I have to say it's very difficult to report about artificial.
Sorry, Renata, you're very soft. Can you get closer to the mic?
I don't know what can I do. I will just speak a little bit louder. So yes, I can understand that, but I have to say that for me as a journalist, my background is just journalism. It's very difficult to report about artificial intelligence. So if I may introduce my example, as Erich told already, I'm the editor and the presenter of the weekly science show, Let's Bite the Science. And the show has been running for already 10 years. On the occasion of its 10th anniversary, this year, we prepared 4 shows in which we overviewed the progress made during the last 10 years in 4 fields. And artificial intelligence was one of them. So our show is 25 minutes long. So we didn't actually know what to put in those 25 minutes. And as at the beginning, I asked few my relatives, friends, and acquaintances with different education and professionals what they understand or imagine when asked what artificial intelligence is, if and where they use it. And last question, is in their opinion artificial intelligence good or bad for our future, for the mankind? So my mom and my mother-in-law don't know what AI is at all, but this is not such a surprise. They're both around 75 years old. The other answers were, it's just a tool. AI is a system which is more clever than humans. It can do some tasks better than humans. It's a sort of computer program which receives some information or rules from people, but is afterwards capable to produce something new. So the second question, where they meet or do they meet artificial intelligence, was computer games, Alexa, Siri, speech synthesizer, online translation programs, phone keyboards which can recognize words. And one of my friends is working in the field of medicine. She sees AI as a great opportunity for better diagnostics in the future. Oh, navigation. And one friend also said that he used this in his new car for overtaking the cars while driving. So the last question, I got mixed answers on the last questions, and that was really interesting. They are all fascinated with it and also pretty scared what it will bring us in the future. So they expect, in a way, bigger things already. For example, robots which can help us in our daily work. Let's say robots who clean instead of us. They also expected self-driving cars already. Now I was really confused what to tell people about artificial intelligence based on these answers. So I will quickly go from topic to topic what we had in our show. So first we introduced the Turing Test. We asked our guest how much is the computer's performance improved today compared to 10 years ago. So would we be able to answer question in such a way to convince a person that it is a human being, not a computer? So then we also said what has changed in those 10 years. Enormous number of data are collected today. Machine learning is much improved. We also stopped by the example how AlphaZero learned to play chess. Then we introduced the MIT research moral machine, because I somehow got a feeling that everybody's interested in self-driving cars, and we all wonder what a self-driving car would do in case of an accident. Could it prevent it? How would it decide what to do? And we also talked about AI journalism. Can AI write? How can it write? And what is actually the difference between my story and the story that AI can write about the same subject? We also presented how researchers can use AI in searching for new drugs in one institute in Slovenia, and how robots can learn simple gestures based on experiment and mistake. So even though the general public, I have a feeling that that doesn't really understand how AI is defined, we didn't try to explain it, at least not with words. We were trying to show this through some examples. And we also wanted to show the difference between AI and human work. Well, we didn't want to address people's fear in our show, even though all of my friends did have some second thoughts about it. They all said, well, I'm not sure this will be good for us. It is bringing me somewhere where I don't want to be, but AI wants me to be there. And last week, I spoke just for this panel with two scientists in Slovenia who are active in the field of artificial intelligence. And I asked them how they see the reports about it in Slovenia. I'm not sure if they were just being nice to me, or they really think so, but they said that we report a lot about what AI is, what it brings to us, what kind of challenges and dangers, what will be its impact on the labor market, ethical question as well. But one pointed out that we don't go really into we don't go deep into the subject, which is probably true. So they expect more explanations and more frequent reports and talks about AI. Well, another strange fact that I found out when I was talking to my friends was when I asked them where did they get most of the information about AI. You probably don't expect this answer, but in the movies. They said most of the things that they know, they think, they imagine about AI are from the movies. So I was a bit surprised. At the end, are we journalists doing a good job? I don't know. I think we are. Mostly we are. We are trying to do it. At least I'm trying to do it. I understand the scientists. I understand the general public, and I'm somewhere in between. And this role is sometimes so difficult, I can't even explain it to you. Because if you ask me, do I understand what AI actually is? No, not as good as I should. So this is the first obstacle. Another one, which is, well, the scientist who wants to talk about different things, And then, yes, general public, as I said, who sometimes wants to know why AI is good for me. So those are the basic questions, and I'm trying to answer them, and I'm trying to go through them every few months or years when we report about artificial intelligence.
Right. Many thanks, Renata. I'm sure you're one of the, the positive examples. And then maybe the last thing you mentioned is really important. Where do people get the visions and the explanations from? Maybe it's not really journalism. Maybe it's just other types of media, such as science fiction films. So, Luke, I saw that you were taking notes, and I want to ask you, when you listen to all of this, with a little bit of a forward-looking, attitude, what do you think? What do we need? What's missing? How can we contribute to a more proper understanding of emerging technologies, including AI?
Well, I will try to be brief because our session is almost over, I see. But I think one of the first points I would like to make is that, we just heard it from Renata. There's a total emphasis on application. But AI should be treated like a science, like genomics. I mean, well, I guess if you go out on the street and you ask people what is genomics, they would not know. And also genomics is not, we don't ask of genomics, well, have you been able to create a new organism already? And that genomics would fail if they cannot, genetically engineer that there are no more diseases, something like that. And so this is the first point, and it's a scientific field with a history of 70 years. And the thing which is frustrating is that this history is not being written. Very few people know how things have developed, and usually it is a new thing comes up, and this is taking all the attention. Whereas it's something like biology, like physics, that progressively develops, and like other engineering fields, which will always continue to go forward. So this is, I think, a first point. And this is why we really need science communicators who know how to communicate about science, but then they should treat AI as a science and not as a kind of new gadget. Now, I think also that the communication is partly dominated by the movies. We just heard it. This science fiction idea of the Terminator, which has nothing to do with AI. AI is not trying to replicate humans, and all of these kinds of things, right? It's a lack of knowledge of the history which makes people make these kinds of claims. But I think the companies have also a big responsibility, because they, you have these PR departments that are pushing these management consulting companies. They're pushing, saying, oh, it's going to be very disruptive, and we all have to prepare for AI, and so on, and dangers, and all these kinds of stories. But they are PR talk. I mean, they're like hyping a new washing powder, which washes whiter than your washing powder. I mean, this kind of attitude. So these are people from advertising that catch the attention, and they are from Google and Facebook and all these companies, which internally have very big groups doing AI, but they sort of present themselves as the champions, right? I mean, if a company now is seeking finance with venture capital, if they use the word AI, their chances of getting money increase with 30% or something like that. Totally ridiculous. And then they set up fake AI where humans are actually running the demos and so on. It's totally a very bad situation which needs to be exposed by the media. So I think treating AI as a science, these corporate news should be held accountable, I would say, particularly if then it fails what they have promised to do. And well, I will stop here, otherwise, you know, we just ran out of time.
Yes, many thanks, Luke. Look, I'll ask Dunja. I mean, the points that Luke mentioned are certainly true. So forward-looking, I mean, you mentioned a lot of these policymakers, and I think some of the communication challenges may also be driven by this need to always sell and perhaps oversell AI. What do you think, Dunja? How can we avoid this?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Now, I believe it's about educating people and raising awareness that AI, it's based on the data and it does what we program it to do. So it doesn't do some crazy thing by itself, two robots talking to each other, nobody understanding. And I guess if people start understanding that it's a tool, you know, if you have a hammer, and because hammer can crash your computer, you are not going to blame the hammer again crashes a screen, right? It's a human who is standing behind. So I guess in that direction, one thing is in the schools to educate children to understand what's behind the algorithms. Because I remember several years ago seeing an article in Economist saying algorithms are going to rule the world. They are deciding, you know, which actor is beneficial to take in the movie and which are causing the movie. So you better pay them not to play in your movie, otherwise you will make loss with movies, right? I know it's attractive to oversell AI, and maybe it's beneficial for some people to get investment, but it's not the reality. It's not truth. So if we would like to also stand for sharing what is real and what is true, then it's educating people and raising awareness. Okay.
Thank you, Dunja. Yeah, Fausto, I think this probably should resonate with you as well. The question of what's happening in online networks and how to inform people about what AI can and cannot do. Let me ask you a very specific question here. I mean, we see this trend towards online content moderation, and policymakers are increasingly putting pressure also on policymakers to use more and more AI to regulate what's going on online. But they don't seem to be aware, they don't seem to have a realistic picture of what AI can and cannot do. So, but that goes very close to, you know, our social interactions. How can we create this realistic understanding, Fausto?
Yeah, we're going to get more and more of these, right? I think COVID is going to get there more and more, and we're not going to go back, right? I mean, you have to go to the science, as Luke said. And what is the science? You simply have to do more, to add more social sciences. In the old days when we were doing AI, it was all philosophy, psychology, right now, all of this. I think we just have to do the science. We really have to integrate what other disciplines, humanities disciplines have done. Let me say two more things. I'm going to quit. Is the good news is now, like we have a clear, even because of COVID of everything, we have clear objectives. For instance, we, as usually say, to integrate different disciplines is very hard because they have different goals. But if you have a common problem to solve, then around the problem you can build interdisciplinarity. So I think that all of this could do a lot of good to AI. I think this could really get us to the second generation, like social networks and AI. One last point, which I think is really crucial. I think this could really think of a new kind of way of doing science, which is, we have all talking about interdisciplinarity for many years now. We have started talking about this like 15 years ago. Now I'm doing a lot of work with social scientists and social psychologists, which are a lot of, and also linguists, lots of fun. What is it? Let me take the example of the social scientist. I mean, they have lots of data, at least the quantitative ones, and they have a lot of qualitative understanding, but they do not have computational models. They do not have models we can put together the data. You see, the data can use the data to learn new models, but you can also use the data to validate whether your computational models work. And I think this is exactly what you're trying to do in WeNet. And I think there's huge potential huge potential. And I think this virtualization of the world that COVID is in a sense doing, I think it's going to push toward this kind of AI more and more and more. And I think this is another dimension where we could all, as scientists, as society, benefit from this very negative thing of where we are now.
Thanks, Fausto. Thanks, Fausto, and thank you all for your input. My feeling is this is not going to be the last discussion of this topic. We need a bit more of this. Renata, this is your opportunity now to communicate something to the researchers. What would you like them to do? I mean, what could make it easier to get the right messages across?
What I wanted to say, just to look maybe, we do communicate artificial intelligence as a science. It is a science, of course. But sometimes when we start our story, sometimes is, let's put it that way, we didn't answer general public to their questions. But sometimes it's good to know where to start the story. You have to find something that they understand and then build the story from that point a little bit further. That's why we had all the examples about using artificial intelligence for looking for new drugs and all other things. So we had some examples that they can understand. It helps us. What should be my message to the scientists? Well, we need to work together. I trust scientists, and you have to trust us. We are not just, we are not here to give you the mic and you cannot tell the whole story from the beginning till the end. You have to trust us that we can that we have some skills how to tell the story that people can understand it easier. If we cooperate, if we work together, the result is better.
Many thanks, Renata. This is a beautiful final word for for this panel. So thanks to bringing this to a natural close. Yes, I think that's one of the important messages, and I do agree. I think journalists are sometimes, maybe there's a misportrayal of journalists in AI as well. So that is a very important message to take home, because I agree, there is a profession who actually knows how to communicate things properly. And maybe this is the trick. We need professionals who know how to do this. But then again, of course, there is no doubt that there are specific challenges here, maybe specific, not just about emerging technologies, but AI in particular. I think one of the reasons is because we are all intelligent, it makes it so difficult to understand what's so complicated about it. Why is it so difficult? Yeah, why don't robots work better already today? And the AI researchers know that it's just damn hard to do that. So with that being said, I would like to thank you all very much. This was a very interesting panel. As I said, my feeling is this could go on forever. It's a very interesting discussion, and I'd love to take it on further, but we have another session coming up. So let me thank you. Let me thank the wonderful panel and your contributions, and I wish you best of luck. And as we say nowadays, stay safe. Thank you.